Morning. All the people at the top, if you want to come down, there's loads of spaces. I've got to be careful because I keep being told not to move around too much. I've got to be told, stay in this lane, because normally I walk the room and do all the kind of things. So my day job, in essence, I'm Chief Security Advisor at Microsoft. So what's one of those? My role, in essence, is to liaise with Microsoft's largest enterprise customers across Europe. So what's keeping them up at night, in essence. I'm also the author of 2 books. This is actually my second book. My first book was Effective Crisis Management, which is really looking at some of the biggest incidents that we've had over the last 20 years and really questioning how bad does it have to get before we make an effective change. So this book, my shameless plug, Understand the Cyber Attacker Mindset, was actually released in March. Shameless plug alert. Also at number 1 on Amazon bestsellers list for computer security in the first week of launch. So thank you. So why? What is it in essence? So when we think a lot about cybersecurity, we always look at it from a technology perspective. Like, well, yeah, hang on, Mike, you work for Microsoft. It's all about the technology. But actually, what we really need to think about is there's 1,000,001 ways in which I can attack you. So there's phishing, there's malware, ransomware, there's all of these kind of things. But actually, there's only a finite reason why I would want to attack you. And that's really what this is trying to get to. It's understanding the humans behind the attacks, why they do what they do, and what's their objective in essence. So part of the book is also looking at a number of case studies. So there's activists, organized crime, nation state actors, insiders, and really kind of looking at those different motivations. But really what I want to talk to today is the biggest cons and why they work. And they do work. So when you're thinking about social engineering in particular and manipulation, I need you to do something. Whether that's I'm trying to get you to open an email, I'm trying to get you to download something, I'm trying to get you to transfer money. Whatever the case may be, there's a level of manipulation behind it. So I'm going to kind of start with, in essence, the kind of the Nigerian prince, and we're going to really dig into this. Now, for everyone in this room who either works in security, has an interest in security, studying security, you'll look at this and go, this is the most stupid, most ridiculous emails I can possibly imagine. How on earth does anyone take any notice of this ridiculous stories and how they kind of come up with these things? How on earth do they extract any money from these ridiculous emails? But actually they do work, and I'm going to tell you why they work. And I'm going to be digging I'm going to do this some maths, there's some science, there's some psychology that kind of sits behind it. Now, actually, the Nigerian prince email has been going on for quite a number of years, but its origins kind of go backwards to the Spanish prisoner. In essence, the Nigerian prince, the Spanish prisoner, these are all examples of advance payment fraud. So in essence, I'm trying to get you to give me some money on the pretense that I'm going to give you something even bigger back. So the whole thing around the Spanish prisoner, you go back a couple of 100 years, so Victorian pub, and when you have to do fraud back then, there was no computers, you have to do it in person. Now the interesting thing, I actually interviewed an ex-fraudster, and they said you need to have a lot of balls, let's say, to do a fraud in person, right in front of someone's face. Rather than doing it online, which we see it around, you don't actually see the victim. You're still manipulating them, but doing it right in front of their face really does take some effort. So the Spanish prisoner, in essence, is really trying to tell people about this rich aristocrat in Spain who's been wrongly imprisoned. And he's a massive billionaire. He has all this money. And in essence, what I need help with, and I'm going to need a favour from you. If you could just give me a little bit of money to help get him out of prison, to get him some help, a lawyer, or whatever the case may be. And if you could do that for me, just give us a little bit of money, when they're out, they're going to give you a share of the fortune. And this, in essence, has continued to build and grow over the years. You've got fraudsters, swindlers, snake oil purchasers and peddlers. And this is the whole thing, is I'm trying to convince you to give me something of yours, and in return, you'll get something back. Now, the interesting thing, when we think about the kind of the stats in the UK, so this is an amalgamation of every single police force in the UK. And what's interesting is over half of crime in the UK right now is cyber and fraud related. And that's a kind of a really frightening, but only 1% of the police force is actually allocated to deal with it. And when we kind of look at kind of where these kind of things stack, so we've got online shopping and auctions, advance payment fraud, there we go, is actually the third most reported crime. Now, again, just caveat that, reported crime. Now, you imagine how many crimes, particularly cybercrime fraud, does not get reported to the police. And there's a rationale for that. If you feel like, oh my goodness, I've been duped, I willingly gave them that money. They didn't even have to steal it from me. I gave it to them. How stupid am I? I'm not going to tell the police. I'm not going to tell my bank. I might just write that off, unless it's a huge amount of money and I don't have a choice. So actually that number, and the fraud number, is probably hugely a massive up than that. So I want to kind of give you that context in essence. But even when you think about how much money, 2.1 billion of reported cybercrime and fraud in this country over the last sort of 12 months. Kind of what's going on. So we need to kind of look at that psychology, if you like, the psychology of persuasion, particularly when we're talking about these advanced payment frauds. Now, the interesting thing is a kind of a number of different things. Now, when we kind of think about, when we think about wording of emails, phishing emails, spear phishing emails, whatever the case may be. Now, reciprocation is kind of the oldest thing in the book. You may have heard quid pro quo. A favour for a favour. In essence, that is exactly what we've been talking about. This is exactly what's been going on for the last hundreds of years. And in the kind of thing, again, in that modern era, you might be given a discount code. If you click this link, I'm going to take you to a new sign up for this thing, and I give you something back in return. This, in essence, is one of the biggest areas of persuasion. I'm going to get something back by doing something for you. The consistency is like doing it more than once. If you get multiple emails or multiple messages or engage in a conversation, you start building trust, you start building rapport with those people in particular. Now, consensus really kind of comes down to the fact that if there's I've given someone a message from somebody who I quite like, who's trusted in the world. Maybe it's a charity or something like that. So if I pretend to be a charity, or let's say something really bad's happening in the world. There's lots of wars going on. There's lots of famines. And I'm collecting money for the needy and the poor. And people naturally want to give in particular. And if I like you, if it's a friend or a family member in particular, I'm more than likely going to do something because I trust you. And this is why they break into your social media accounts. And this is why they then connect to all of your friends and your family, or they pretend to be a family member on WhatsApp, or whatever the case may be. So the authority really then comes down to someone in seniority. Now, this could be a government official, particularly when you get that warning to say you haven't paid your taxes, or I'm the police, or whatever the case may be. And if you don't do something bad is going to happen to you in return. So again, if something good is going to happen, I'm going to give you some money. Something bad's going to happen, I'm going to arrest you, you're going to get put into prison, or whatever the case may be. But someone in seniority is asking you to do something, you're more likely to do it. And this scarcity is a one-time offer. If you want this big discount, and if you want to get this money right now, you need to do it by Friday. Because by Friday, the price is going up, or the offer is no longer there. People panic because people like a bargain. People like special services, particularly when you're thinking about that kind of quid pro quo as we were talking about. So these are the kind of all the things that are going on in the background. How enticing you. I could use more than one of these. That's something to be mindful of. Now, I said there was a little bit of math and a little bit of science behind this. Now, people are not really aware sometimes that Microsoft actually has a research facility. So we've got our technicians, we've got scientists, and they're really trying to think about some of these big world problems. And I'm talking about AI in particular, or quantum. So what is the kind of repercussions of some of these things? And so naturally, they write a lot of white papers. We're in a university. You're probably seeing all of these things. Now, I have read this. It is quite in-depth. It's quite hard going, if I'm honest. There's quite a lot of formulas. Believe it or not, some formulas behind the Nigerian prince. Now, for you guys, it's going to be kind of too long, didn't read. I'm not going to print this out and expect you all to read it and do a quiz at the end. So I'm going to tell you exactly what it says in a roundabout way to help you understand why these big cons work as they do. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is who to attack. Now, being in cybersecurity, you're used to this whole true positive, false positive thing. In essence, a true positive is I've attacked you in one way or another. I've done all this social engineering. I've manipulated you. You have handed me your cash, data, assets, whatever it is that I need. Now, the false positive, if I still attacked you, but I got nothing from you, and that's a kind of a bit of a waste of time from my perspective. How much effort am I prepared to put in, therefore? And this kind of brings us some of these dilemmas. Just how do you actually distinguish between the viable and non-viable in particular? A kind of attacker dilemma number 2 is how many victims do I have to go through? So 100, thousands, hundreds of thousands before I get that one payout. And what does that payout look like? So I then have to kind of think about how am I going to work this out? Believe it or not, there is a formula behind it. So how to attack? Attacker dilemma 3. So we're kind of sort of seeing a lot of the objectives of some of these sites. So put malware onto your devices. Now, most malware isn't that clever to actually be able to extract any cash from your bank accounts. So my dilemma is, how do I actually go to the next level, in essence? So yes, I can steal credentials, and I can do all these phishing emails, and you can see we have access brokers now. They're actually going to do a lot of this donkey work, particularly if I'm trying to attack a company. But actually, it's expensive. Even when I've got to have all of these scammers. I've got to have all of these attackers. They kind of want a wage. So I'm not going to do it for free. I need to know that at some point I'm going to get a payout. And even when I get that money, what am I going to do with that money? Because I need to kind of actually do a little bit of money laundering. Because if I just put that money in my bank account, people are going to notice. People are going to start asking some awkward questions. And so I really need to kind of think about, therefore, who am I attacking and why? And is it a good investment decision? Well, this is where the paper gets into the math and the science. And so you've got kind of n number of users, whatever that n is. And I'm trying to extract how many of those are viable in particular. And I don't actually know if they're viable or not unless I try. Now, days of old, if I'm doing it in front of your face, I can probably hazard a guess how engaged you are. I'm actually having a conversation. I'm having a conversation with all of you. I can actually look at all of you combined, and one of you may actually go to the next level. But I don't know that, do I? If I'm online, I have no idea who any of you are. And so I kind of have to kind of figure it out. Now, I could do some background checks on social engineering. Maybe some attackers might actually do that. So I want to know who you are, what country you're in. Have you got any money? Are you worth attacking? But actually, rich does not mean viable. And actually, if you're quite rich, depending on where that money you got it from, you're probably quite savvy as well, I would have thought, in terms of investments and looking after that money in particular. So for me to be successful, it's not just a case I know you have money, I actually have to extract it from you. And this is the where it gets very complicated. And so actually, yeah, I could get malware onto your machine, but I still need to get money out of it. So it's not an easy task. And so this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because that's a false positive. I have wasted a huge amount of money and effort to get this malware onto your device because I think you've got some money. Now what? So this is kind of where we then need to take it to the next level. So I now need to think about optimal operating profit, because everything has a return on investment. So I have to have this balancing act between how many people I attack, how many are viable, how much money do I extract, is it even worth my time? And so I have to get better at classifying who's who and who's going to give me some money. So actually, it's not just enough that that you have money. I need to go to the next level. So I need more than one variable. So not only do I need the fact that you've got money, you've got a particular vulnerability, I can get onto your device, I can move the money, I can kind of do all of these things. Oh my God, that is a lot of work. Particularly if I don't have a lot of money myself. Now, this might work if I'm going after a big target, like a company has lots of money, but I don't have a lot of money and investment to go out with. So I need to figure out what I do next. And this is where we get to the interesting part. In essence, this is the litmus test. This is how I go about extracting the viable and non-viable. Now, I'm kind of talking about the Nigerian prince in particular, and some of these countries, some of these African countries, they don't have a lot of money. So the average take-home wage is significantly less than the UK or any Western entity. So if I'm a budget-constrained attacker, I'm not a nation-state actor, I'm certainly not an organised crime, what am I going to do? And this is where the Nigerian prince email comes into a world of its own. This is the qualifier, if you like, for the budget-constrained attacker. So the first thing, let's go part one. So the first one is the red. I need to weed some of the first round out. So if I'm a scammer, and you all know about the Nigerian prince emails and how ridiculous they are, why would I actually say I'm from Nigeria in that email? Why would I make it more convincing? If I'm trying to get you to extract some money, why wouldn't I say I'm from Switzerland or somewhere a bit more trustworthy? Doesn't make sense, does it? If I'm, why wouldn't I just say I'm a different country altogether? You kind of think I couldn't pick a worse country if I'm trying to actually scam somebody. But actually, stupidity is not the answer, as we said. These people are very, very good, actually, at extracting money. They understand the English language, very, very well. They know the difference between English and American English in terms of their spelling, and they know exactly how to launder money, in particular. So, why would I come up with something so ridiculous, innocent? So the actual Nigerian prince email is on purpose. Now, do you remember when we used to tell people what to look for in their emails? That poor grammar, bad spelling. That is on purpose, by the way. That is not because they're from an African nation or a different nation with a different language. They want you to think that it's actually somebody from Nigeria who's sending you this email. So the bad grammar is done on purpose to get you to think that that person's actually real. So, so the next goal is if I need to attack as many people as possible, why wouldn't I make the email as convincing as possible? Why wouldn't I just go down, just not have it so ridiculously stupid? Just something easy. We see all these gift card scams. We have I have a parcel for you. Just give me £2 and come collect your parcel. It's £2. To us, that's nothing. But for somebody living in this country where it's not a lot of money, I do that multiple times over. I'm going to clean up. So why don't I just do that? Doesn't make sense, right? So this is why I need to get to my optimal operating profit. And the labor intensive is not just a case of I send you this email Actually, the real work happens when you respond to me. Now, most of us, as I said, in this room, we get that email and laugh, show it to our friends maybe, or just delete it and go, what a load of shit. Can't believe people are falling for this stuff. And so we then kind of think about, again, how do I engage someone in this conversation? How do I know where the true positives are versus those false positives in particular? And this all comes down to the wording of the email. So the goal of the Nigerian prince email is not to attract the viable, is to attract the non-viable, detract the non-viable in particular. So how do we do that? So in essence, the whole purpose is I need to identify the most gullible, stupid people in our whole environment. Now, I don't know that just by looking at you or looking at you online or social media. I kind of need you to self-identify, in essence. And in essence, that means when I send you this ridiculously worded email, whatever that is, you respond to me because you believe it. Now, the interesting thing, again, we have another group within Microsoft called our Digital Crimes Unit. And this is where we do mass takedowns of fraudulent sites, fake domains, all this kind of thing. And then what is quite interesting is a lot of the people who kind of fall for these scams are not interested in the money. It's not about the money. They actually feel like they're helping somebody. They believe the sub story behind it. And it's that story in particular that reels them in. So let's have a look at some of these definitions of gullibility. Tell me what you think about it. In particular, they're easily persuaded. They have a lack of world experience, critical thinking. They trust people beyond doubt. Some of these people might also be quite religious, so they're actually taught that we should trust everybody, no matter who they are, no matter what's been said. And if they have a really difficult situation, I just want to help you. I really just want to help. Now, the other problem we have as well is imagine how many people have been distraught through a relationship that's broken down. They no longer trust somebody, but they desperately want to be in a relationship again, in particular. So some of these are easily deceived. They're tricked. They have low self-esteem. They have a tendency, they want validation, they want friendship, they want to have this conversation with people. Maybe they don't have a lot of experience in particular. So this is that gullibility that they're looking for. But I really would challenge you, in essence, that actually these people are not gullible. They are vulnerable. These are the most vulnerable people in our society. And these struggles that they're having are real. They really are. When something goes wrong, they feel guilty. They feel bad. I can't believe this thing went wrong. I want to be more cautious. I've been caught out, but I don't know how to be. I feel immature compared to you. You all know security. I don't. This is not what I do. I have never been in security. I've never been in tech. I don't know these things. And so I feel embarrassed. I can't believe I've been deceived. But I have a tendency as well to ignore those red flags and warning signs in particular. So what are they? What are those warning signs that we teach everybody else except the most vulnerable people in our society? So we have the impersonal greetings, we have the email from someone in seniority, that foreign dignitary, the promise of unrealistic amounts of money, flattery, safety, don't worry, all your money's safe with me, you can trust me, I'm a good person. They have that poor grammar and awkward phrasing that we were talking about. Now here's some examples of various different, varying degrees of them. Some of these are a little bit hard to read. I'm going to show you the one in the middle that literally ticks every single box. We're looking at all of the things. So we basically have the impersonal greet, dear beloved friend. Now we don't in the UK introduce ourselves as beloved, dear beloved friend. Now, if I'm going to enter a business relationship with you, I kind of think I'm going to want to know your name. You think I'd have done some research. And so they have this foreign dignitary. They're actually from the government. They've kind of gone all of these different things. Unrealistic sum of money. I'm going to give you 20% of $4.2 million. just by you put a little bit of money into a bank account. That's all you need to do. Don't worry, but I'm going to give you quite a big sum back. This sense of urgency, you must respond without delay. Immediately respond to me. Whatever the case, flattery, you're reliable and you're trustworthy, in particular. And we kind of have the religious thing, remain blessed, and various things like an assurance of safety. It's this is to help my education in particular. This is an investment. You're going to get the money back. Don't worry. I only normally have a little sob story about all of these things. My parents died. I feel so down and so miserable. If I sign it by a woman, probably more likely to respond to me than a man. But these are kind of the awkward phrasing. Permit me of my desire into business relationship with you. They deliberately miss out some words, so it makes you feel like this person is actually from where they say they are, in particular. And you're probably wondering, do they really make money from this, and how much money in particular? Oh, they do. Let me introduce you to the self-proclaimed billionaire Gucci master. Used to call himself Ray Hush Puppy. His actual name is Raymond Abbas. Now, Raymond, in particular, grew up in Nigeria. That's his home, right up there. This is where the police found him, in Dubai. Because when you're making so much money, oh my God, did he make a lot of money? Kind of people are going to notice when you're driving around in a pimped up Hummer, and they do, don't believe me, because they have celebrity status. They're making so much money, but they give back. They give back to their family. They give back to communities. So people don't really care. You're making all this money, you're scamming these people. It's not in our country. Who gives a shit, basically? And even the police don't care, because they're getting a little bit of a backhander as well. Until the FBI, and you're kind of on our radar. You are scamming one too many people in America or the Western world. You're going to have to do something about it. So let me tell you a little bit about Ray, in particular, Raymond Ray Hush Puppy. So he's making so much money, he had to move to Dubai. And to make this whole pretense about how he made his money, he pretended to be a property tycoon. And that's how he makes his money, And he had 2.5 million followers on Instagram who all believe this in particular. So at the time he was arrested in Dubai, there was an arrest warrant from the FBI, 41 million in cash, 13 luxury cars, the email address of 2 million victims, $24 million of crime it cost people in particular. Not only that, he got so good at what he was doing, he ended up being a middleman for a lot of organised crime gangs, because he got to be very good at money laundering, let's say. He was so good, he even laundered money for North Korea. And so one of the things that he did, he escalated upwards from the Nigerian prince email to business email compromise. I can make much more money if I attack a company rather than an individual in particular. Now, this is this glory lifestyle, but crime does it pay? So in November 2022, he was sentenced to 11 years in a federal prison. But you guys think about that for a minute, how much money they're making, not from gullible people, from vulnerable people. So therefore, what are the opportunities for individuals? How can we help them to help themselves? In essence. So it's about learning about how to deal with skepticism, how to develop that emotional resilience. When something bad's happened, what do I do about it? How do I bounce back? And so how do I develop critical thinking? This is about education in particular, and being assertive. And one of the most interesting things, believe it or not, how you can stop this is your ability just to say no. Now, the interesting thing, again, I interviewed someone in my book who actually studies the language from romance scams. And what she was basically looking at is the way it's the language, how they entice people, how they coerce people. So it's akin to domestic abuse. With the language they utilize and everything else, it's very, very hard, therefore, to actually say no to these individuals. If you do say no, what happens next is the bit that's interesting. Because if they do actually care for you, they are actually a friend. and you can trust them. They will understand that you don't have money. You don't have the capability. You're not able to send them money. I don't have any money to give you. But actually, if they are a scammer, they will push even harder. And they don't care that you don't have the money. Go and get the money. And so what do we think about as organizations? So we sort of that there's a lot of individuals as organizing. When people on the reverse of the side of the fence, when they fall victim to some of these scams, what do? Well, first off, we need to stop that victim blaming, shaming, and scapegoating. This all comes down to your culture. If your culture is that bad, then when someone makes a mistake, you discipline them, you put them on the repeat offenders list, you call them the bad, stupid user, you should have known better, why didn't you know better, why didn't you do all the things? First and foremost, if you're that way inclined, whatever I say next does not matter, because your culture is bad. And I just wanted, that's something to really think about with regards to your culture. So what do we do from an organisational perspective? I'm probably going a bit over time. So the main thing is, how do we reduce the true positives and increase the attacker costs in particular? Now, some people have actually gone into scam baiting. Believe it or not, they make this an actual job, and they actually go into full-blown conversations and reel that attacker in, pretend actually to play them at their own game, and go through all the motions, email after email, message after message, month after month sometimes, and then they drop out right at the end because in essence they're building up that cost to the attacker. So the first thing we should, therefore, think like an attacker when it comes down to understanding the gaps and vulnerabilities and how they can be exploited. Understanding human emotions and how they can be manipulated in particular. Cannot underestimate the impact of education in particular. Not just the type of threats that we talked about, phishing, malware, ransomware, but how they get you to click that link, how they get you to transfer money, how they get you to build trust at all levels. And we have to invest in technology, so we have to assume, taking into consideration the last slide, for the best will in the world, people are going to get manipulated. It happens to all of us at some point in our lives. And so when I do click the link, when I do these things, this technology has to be the safety net. So I have to make sure I'm prepared that you're going to give a credential away. I'm prepared that you're going to download malware. I'm prepared that you're probably going to enter into a relationship that's going to swap out an invoice or a different bank account for business email compromise or one of these things. So I need to build all those processes in particular. And the last point that I will leave you with is empowerment. I need to empower people to say no. And that means also in a business context. Remember I said about seniority? I'm impersonating somebody who's pretending to be your boss's boss, or the CEO, and I'm telling you to do it right now. And if you don't do it right now, there's going to be consequences. You're going to get reported to HR. And so you need to be empowered. I don't care if you're the CEO. That doesn't sound right to me. I want you to prove who you are, and I'm just going to go and check with my boss, and boss's boss, and boss. And if it's correct, remember, if it's really the boss, they're going to understand that you need to check the processes because they're the ones who put the processes in the first place, because we've got a good culture that checks these things and allows people to check these things. So that's an important thing, is the empowerment. Now, I don't think we have time for questions. So, 5 minutes? Cool. Okay. So, I've just tipped the top of the iceberg. This is financially motivated threat actors. Most of them are, but not all of them. Some of them don't care about money. They're activists. They just want revenge. They want social justice. Some of them are nation-state actors. No money involved at all. I just hate you. That's it. Just hate you. Just because of the country you live in. It's got nothing to do with you. As individuals, you're just guilty by association. And so that's again something to be mindful of. And then we've got the insiders who have kind of got to the point they're so fed up with this company, the way you treat people. I've been watching you, the whistleblowers, with your bad processes and the scapegoating and the victim blaming and everything else. So I'm going to do the attack. from inside. Because I can. Because I understand your processes and how bad your processes are. And so that, in essence, is the whole kind of pretext of my book. So there is a book signing. I will be upstairs. But let's have some questions if we've got time. You can cut them off as well if need be. Yeah. Questions? Oh, yeah, please.
Looking at the data, is it getting worse? Or is there a shift in the future where people are going to be more empowered and it's not going to be a problem as much?
It is getting worse. Because the problem you have, as technology gets better and better at identifying anomalies, particularly until malware, blocking malware and all the things, again, we're talking about optimal operating profit. Why am I going to waste my time trying to get into your network when you're probably going to stop me at the first pass second? If I start laterally moving, you're going to block me. I've got to do all the things. And so unless I'm a persistent, highly resourced actor, it's a complete waste of time. So actually, what I can do is I'll do the social engineering. Now, the interesting thing as well, that you might be aware of already, we're seeing a huge increase in internal phishing. So in essence, when you talk about how to educate people, you're probably telling them to look for, this is an external email. You don't normally get an email from this person. Check the header, just in case. So if I'm a threat actor and I want you to do something, I'm going to impersonate someone in seniority, remember I said, in your company. Because imagine it's bonus time and you've done such a great work, team. Well done. Extra special bonuses for you guys. All you need to do is open this spreadsheet, put in your credentials, and it will tell you what your extra special bonus is. Now, that, in essence, is putting malware into your environment because people can't help themselves. It's like, quid pro quo, what's in it for me? I'll open this if you give me some money. And so the way it's worded, and because it's from someone in seniority, you naturally do it. But you don't get any of those warning messages. But I've just put a phishing email to everyone in your company and downloaded malware right in front of your nose. So they are going to that nth degree and that effort. So yes, it's going to get worse. And this is why we need the education at all levels. We really need to kind of think about vulnerable. When I talk about vulnerable, this is not just old people, it's young people. It's people with learning difficulties. It's people who do not spend time online like us and in security. And so we actually need to, as the empowerment, people knowing what to do, how to report things. And I think the interesting thing as well is advanced payment fraud in particular. People don't even know it's fraud. People just feel like I sent you money. So how can you didn't steal it from me, I gave it to you. This is misrepresentation. It's one of the oldest things from law in particular. Because I fooled you, I did not give you the facts, and therefore you transferred this money. I effectively lied. We did have this contract that we had, and therefore under that law, it is fraud. So that's where the education comes into, knowing that this is fraud, how to report it, and actually sharing victim stories as well at the same point. Yep. Yeah.
So we understand the language that they're using, hyperchecks they employ. If we're using those to screen emails for fraud, so has there been an adaptation in the language being used to avoid such methods, and would there be an invention of privacy if we're scanning users' emails to see fraud?
So, yes. So the interesting thing is actually, we think about AI, the benefit of AI. So we have seen some threat actors using large language models to refine the language in their emails. So as we sort of said, if English is not your first language, how do I write this as I'm addressing an English person or an American person, even a Canadian, Australian? We all speak English, but we all have different cultures. We all have different dialects. So how do I write it in such a way that it's going to not just sound like it's coming from whatever country or whoever I'm speaking to, that's going to get them to think that I'm addressing it, but also then how do I write it in such a way to get you to click the link? Because that's what I need to do. I need you to click this thing. I need you to reply. I need you to do whatever the next stage is. So you do is reverse engineering, to use the same large language model in essence to detect that, detect the language, the type of language, the mannerisms of the language, and what it's getting you to do. Does this look suspicious?
So that would be only set on most of them, they more to our usage of them. But
It's a bit of both. It's a little bit of both in terms of. So I'll give you an example. 25% of all emails that Microsoft sees gets anywhere near the recipient. So we've already done the initial scanning of those emails. To first round, if you like, in terms of spamming and where the addresses are coming from, of scanning the emails, kind of where and everything else. So we've already removed the first 25%. The next round goes in, and it does come a little bit comes down to the technology that's being utilised. So even if, again, I'm not trying to do an advert for Microsoft, just an example, but even then, if you were to click something inadvertently, we have safe links and safe attachments. So it's all launched in a sandbox environment, in essence. So nothing actually launches into your environment. And even though scanning across the URL, so this doesn't look right, that kind of thing. This is going to a different address. So there's stuff that's built into the email technology, whatever it is you're purchasing. So there's that. And then there's add-on services that you can also look at, with particularly the AI, where it's kind of it's going to that fine level of granularity, looking down into that nth degree on some of the language.
So then you said with Microsoft over at the sort of less well known, less
I would say, you've got to kind of think about people at different price points. If you're a small individual versus a big, massive enterprise, whatever technology, doesn't matter if it's Microsoft or Google or whoever, you need to understand the built-in capability, first of all, and are you actually using it? Because, again, I can never stats, if you like, stats. So of all the companies, I'm talking companies now, not individuals, of all the companies at Microsoft, customers, that have the ability to have MFA, multi-factor authentication, built in as part of their service, they've already paid for it, only 26% of them have actually turned it on. Now, that being said, we are going to default it on, because we get into this, it's already defaulted for individuals. So if you're getting Xbox or your own OneDrive or whatever, MFA is already on by default. It's not already on default for some other enterprises, but we are turning it on by default, whether you like it or not.
I think we're fast entering conversation on the question.
Yeah.
So I think if everyone could give Sarah, we're not going to have time for another question. So a round.